What's going on, everybody? I'm Brian, creator, moderator of Brian Speaks On, the channel you can find on YouTube and Facebook, both of the same name. And for those who are familiar with my concept of talk, it's just basically a channel in which I reflect on topics, whether current or rhetorical, and I try to offer a slightly different angle on a subject that's relevant, prevalent, hot, sensitive, what have you. Usually it's in a social fashion, sometimes relationship wise, but this particular one that I wanted to talk about today is in regards to the impassioned, extremely eloquent, and very relevant speech that was given by Jesse Williams at the BET Awards for this year, 2016. Where do you even begin with it? Other than it was something that was needed. The funny thing about things that happen according to timeline history, we always seem to have someone that comes in the moment when it's needed. And I'm not so much saying that Jesse Williams is the modern era or whatever, who have you, but what I'm saying is, like, there is always someone that comes with something when it's needed at the time. You can go back to the era of Ali, when we needed Ali, even when we didn't realize we needed Ali to be who he was and how he was during that time in America and in the world. But it wasn't so much Jesse Williams that I wanted to speak on, even though, as you guys who are familiar with the channel know how I do. For those who aren't, what I do is I lean toward a specific subject, and I use that to venture into a much broader topic of discussion. And Jesse Williams is the specific platform to jump into the much broader topic today. And first of all, I want to give a shout out to him in a sense of, from one particular kind of respect factor, and that is for those who've been paying attention to my video logs. My last video log discussed light-skin privilege amongst light-skinned black people, and it's kind of easy to tell which side of the brown paper bag test I qualify for when it comes to that. And he is another person who is like that. I respect him to the utmost for being within, staying within what he wants people to see him as. He does not want you to focus on his appearance. He does not want you to focus on his shade. He just wants to be who he is, and let it be known that he recognizes the struggle. He is among the struggle. He is one of the struggle. And from a light-skinned brother, I respect that to the fullest, and I thank him for coming with that perspective. It was very awesome to see that. And it also shows, that blackness comes in all different forms. It doesn't mean that one form is deeper than the other. You could be just as deep in whatever shade of blackness you come from, and that was dope. Much respect to him. But the issue that I wanted to get into was some of the sideshow stuff that came about from that speech. Now, of course, whenever you have issues of unapologetic black speak, culturally, and whenever you get into people who want to speak about upliftment of the black culture and of the black race, you always get very, redundant, ignorant backlash. And of course, the sad thing about it is that we as black people are already preconditioned to receive that. You know, it's never a surprise to us. You know, the surprise would be if everybody universally accepted what was said. That would be the shocker. I think we'd all be falling out our chairs if that was the case. So, in a sense, just that understanding alone, that we go into this with the expectation of harsh blowback, is something to be said in itself. So this is no different. Another element that comes into play is the aspect of people who mean well but don't understand what they're getting themselves into when they say certain things. And I want to focus this particular topic on that aspect, more, very specific to what most black people like to term well-meaning white people. It's not so much that we don't understand what you're trying to say. It's the fact that you don't understand that we understand. If that makes any sense. We understand perfectly. The problem is that you don't understand. When you want to, I don't even want to say interject. It's really just, if you want to give a particular kind of support, you need to understand that you're still giving it in a format which is conditioned to white validation. Even though you don't mean to, and we understand that. We understand that. Black people get that. But we're trying to learn you to something that you refuse to understand. Because as far as you're concerned, you're coming from the right place. And again, we get that. We know your heart is in the right place. And that's great. But you need to understand you need to learn how to adjust to other people's forms of decorum. Like, you don't go to Japan and try to shake a brother's hand. Even though you mean well, that means you're extending yourself in a gesture of goodwill and faith. But they find that offensive out there. So what you need to learn is that people have different formats of decorum. And if you want to show your support without making it about you, then you need to understand how that's done. And you need to understand that you may not mean to offend, but it doesn't mean that you're not still offending people. And with that being said, there was a little mini blow up at Justin Timberlake for his basically giving out a couple of tweets in support of Jesse Williams' speech and such. Now, this is one of those things, like, again, you need to understand when you're walking into a certain situation just what it is that you're walking into. Some people feel like just because they themselves aren't a representation of a certain thing, that they themselves do not have to follow a particular code of decorum because of that. And I think Justin Timberlake kind of fell into that, into that glue trap. Now, we all know Justin Timberlake has been making basically black music for a long time. That's what his career has been platformed upon, and what he benefits from. A lot of people want to accuse him flat out of being one of the people that Mr. Williams articulated in his speech in terms of whiteness using cultural appropriation of blackness and profiting and benefiting from that. Now, if you would have asked me about Justin Timberlake specifically a couple of years back, I would have told you that I don't think that he qualifies under that stigma, because his heart is in the right place. He isn't exploiting black music and just utilizing it as his tool of capitalism, because it comes from his own soul. He feels it, he loves it, so it's not fake from him. that would have been my my viewpoint a couple of years back. The one thing about, you know, growing and maturing and as we go along according to what we interpret as time, is that we get to evolve. Those of us who challenge ourselves and constantly continue to think and learn and be open to learning. Now, one thing that I have learned, you know, along the way is that there are levels to most anything, and there are levels to cultural appropriation as well. And I think people like Justin and other folks like him should take heed to the people of the culture, the indigenous people of the culture that he has ingratiated himself within. You need to understand that people will view you as an outsider, as an interloper, regardless of whether you have it in your heart and your soul that you love this format, you love this culture. The thing that doesn't help his cause is that you don't see him helping this cause. And that's where he falls, in my opinion, under the stigma of being one of these people who fits the narrative of using cultural appropriation. It's not so much he's stealing the music, something that he doesn't love, but he's just benefiting from it. It's that you can't be half-assed in the culture. If you're gonna love the culture, you have to understand that you can't just benefit from the good parts of it. You know, people reflect back to the incident at the Super Bowl with Janet Jackson, how she caught all that flack, and just seemed like Justin just kind of did the little side shuffle off the stage and left her out there to hang in more ways than one, you could say. People didn't forget that. Black people did not forget that. You know, you love this music so much, you love this culture so much, where you at? When you know that this culture is suffering, the people of this culture are suffering. And this is where y'all get stuff twisted. Because well-meaning white folks have the problem of living according to a particular ideology. And the problem with ideology, and that's going to be another topic that I get into at another time, but just in brief, what I have found that the problem with living according to a very dogmatic ideology is that if it doesn't match up very well to the reality of what exists, then you are now blinded in delusion because of it. Now, to break it down a little bit better, is people like Justin want to live in a colorblind world. They want to look at everybody as humans. We're all human beings. We're all in this together. That's a philosophical ideology. That's one of those things where the phrase "that works in theory" applies. Sure, we're all supposed to look at each other as human beings and equal and things. In theory, that works. When has that ever existed in reality? When? Can you point to a period in history, human history, not even just black and white history? Can you point to a period in the history of humanity where everybody viewed each other equally, where egalitarianism ruled? That has never happened. So you are doing yourself a disservice by trying to live according to an ideology that does not exist in reality. And then you try to make other people look like they're the ignorant ones when you do that. And what I mean by that is like there was again, he put out a couple of tweets basically saying, yo, props to Jesse, that was awesome, I was inspired, and blah blah blah. And you know, he caught some heat from black folks, you know. Maybe a little unfairly harsh, perhaps. Depends on where you fall in the perspective category. You know, people were basically saying like, yo, he was basically describing you, homie. You know, what you got to say about that? What do you have to say about being in this culture but not speaking up for it, defending it, fighting for it? And he gave the typical mean well white person response, which is, I see everybody as humans. I'm colorblind to these things. I don't see black people, I just see a person. I truly don't grasp how white people to this point have not recognized how offensive black people react to that saying. Have you people not noticed that we don't like to hear that? We don't want to hear that? Why do you think that is? And yet you continue to come with that ideology to us. Yes, but if you would only understand. No. And that's the problem. You think we don't understand. But we understand perfectly. We understand that your existence here is different from ours. You were created and raised in an environment and in a society that has benefited you. You have not had to endure things that we have. And that part you understand. But for some reason, you can't transition that outside of your own existence. That's where the synapses happen, you know? Because you recognize that we as black people have endured things that you have not and continue to, and yet you still think that we all live in the same reality. How can we live in the same reality if you have already just admitted that we are not given the same treatment in reality? We're not seen the same way. We are not dealt with the same way. See, you're living in a contradiction right there. And when you say things like, I love everybody, we're all people, how can you say that you love us and yet you don't fight for us? That's the part when you go, oh, well, you know what? That's a black person issue. And I'm not black, so since I'm not black and that's a black people problem, let me step over, let me just fall back. So how can you be colorblind and yet see color when it's time for you to speak up? That's when you see color, though. You see what I'm saying? You can't be colorblind to an issue and not see me as black, but then when you see me struggling in a way that is unique to black people, that's when you see what my color is all of a sudden. Now, oh yeah, well, hey bro, I'm sorry you have to go through that. You know, it doesn't work that way. You don't get to play both ends of the candle like that. You don't get to tap dance the issue without catching some real heat. So you might be sitting there feeling like you misunderstood according to your tweets. You're misunderstood. No, you are perfectly understood. The problem is that you don't understand that you're perfectly understood. So you see yourself as misunderstood. And what have you now done? You have made it about you. You came into a black cultural problem. You came into a black cultural topic and made it about you being misunderstood. And the problem is that you don't recognize that we understand y'all. You don't understand us as well as you think you do. You see, just because you immerse yourself within the culture, you didn't become black. You know? And the thing is, black people don't expect that of you and people like you. We don't expect you to all of a sudden feel the lashes on your back from our ancestors. We understand. We understand that the system did not raise you to experience that. But what you need to understand is that you cannot live colorblind in a colored society. It doesn't work that way. This is a society of all shades and all colors, of all people. Black people have the ability to recognize people who are awesome and at the same time white. And at the same time brown. At the same time blue-black. At the same time pale as hell. At the same time freckle-faced. Albino. So we don't take away who you are in order to recognize you. And that's what you do when you say, I don't see you as black. You're saying that in order for you to have validated me on some level, you had to take away the fact that I'm black to do so. Because that is how you get white validation. That's pretty much what you're suggesting. Even though that's not what you mean. It's not what you mean, but it's what you're doing. It's just like, when you do something that irritates somebody, but you don't think that you're doing anything wrong, you don't correct the behavior that irritates the other person. So what happens? You keep having this same meeting of head to wall. And then you don't understand, because as far as you're concerned, you're not doing anything wrong. Even though you keep having the same argument and the same problem. That's when you have to check your ego, open your mind, listen to what the person is telling you, and correct your behavior. And this goes to Justin and all the other well-meaning white people out there. Understand that when you are dealing in parameters that are outside of your societal, structure, you have to adjust to that. It is not our responsibility to adjust to you and understand you. When you come in my house, it is not my responsibility to augment the entire, format of how I live. Now, I'll be your host, and I will ingratiate you. But it is for you to understand the decorum of my house, same as it is vice versa. And you, Justin, of most people, should have had a better understanding of that. But it's all good. All you have to do, basically, is learn from this. And if you really want to show your love, then you will stand next to a Jesse Williams, or you will stand next to one of our current, you'll stand next to a Van Jones, and you will speak about things within this culture, since this culture is so relevant to you, and you love it so much, and the people within it. If you love the people within the culture, and you're not seeing us, and you're not seeing color, then that means you're just defending another human being that you know is being mistreated, that you know is being disenfranchised, and that you know is being oppressed. So if that's the case, why aren't you speaking up? Why aren't people like you speaking up, who fall under the same category? That's all I'm saying. And with that, I've spoken mad long as I usually do. I'm sorry about that. Please give this as much of your time as you can stand. I thank you all for listening. I wish you all well. Let us all bless up. Stay unapologetic. Stay who you are. Stay real. Peace.